They can't lose. They will do anything to win. So how do they do that? They're not going to do COVID again. I know everyone on the right's afraid they're going to do COVID and mask mandate. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. If they've already been exposed, that won't work. There's going to be, no, what are they going to do? They're going to go to war with Russia is what they're going to do. They're going to go to war with Russia is what they're going to do. There will be a hot war between the United States and Russia in the next year. And
really?
Yes, of course. They want it anyway. I don't think we'll win it, but that's a separate analysis. But I think it's a political matter. They need to declare war footing in order to assume war powers in order to win. I believe that.
Well, that was disgraced former Fox News host turned professional Russian propagandist Tucker Carlson, not only claiming that the United States will be in a hot war with Russia in less than a year, but also claiming that the United States would lose that war. Which is not only absolute bullshit and straight Russian propaganda meant to sway public opinion away from helping the people of Ukraine, but it also used to be considered traitorous rhetoric. You know, at this point, if that day ever were to come, God forbid, you know, the day that they've been saying it's going to happen for the last few years and it hasn't come yet, I'm not so sure what side Tucker would be on. Would it be on the side of the U.S. military? Or would it be on the side of Russia?
Tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Well, that's good to know. Maybe you should do us all a favor and buy a place in your favorite country then. You know, you could buy a nice flat in Moscow with some nice big windows and leave us the hell alone. Tucker sat down with just an esteemed political analyst and expert, Adam Carolla. I'm kidding, he's an absolute meathead. He's the guy that used to end his show with girls on trampolines.
Now we leave you with girls jumping on trampolines.
Yeah, that guy. The right now thinks he has his finger on the political pulse of America. This ridiculous interview was deranged and dangerous from start to finish. And even though most Americans would find this interview repulsive and ridiculous, I'm sure it's going to be a real hit in Moscow. I think it's pretty safe to say that Tucker Carlson has dropped down a level or two since he got fired from Fox News. Unfortunately, that didn't stop his fear-mongering, lies, and literally there's just no way else to say it, Russian propaganda that you would hear from RT, Solyevov, and literally straight from the Kremlin itself.
We're already at war with Russia, of course. We're funding their enemies. So we're fighting Russia. But I mean, an open battle with Russia where we say we're at war with Russia. I think that could easily happen. I think we could Tonkin Gulf our way into it where all of a sudden missiles land in Poland. The Russians did it. Our NATO ally has been attacked. We're going to war. I could see that happening very easily. So if you're worried about that, you need to put as much pressure as you possibly can on the Republican-held Senate to force a peace, which can be done. The United States could force a peace in Ukraine tonight. We're funding one side. There is no Ukrainian army outside of NATO. If NATO withdrew its support for Ukraine, Ukraine would crumble in a day. So we are the only power in the world that can bring both sides to the table to force a peace. Otherwise, I would bet my house on it. We are going to war with Russia.
It is just absolutely remarkable to me how much bullshit that man can pack into a clip that's less than a minute long. And the cavalier way he can just speak about an entire nation crumbling because of his decision to withdraw funding while they're at a time of war because they were attacked by a dictator at the end of his ropes who's trying to put back together the Soviet Union. The rhetoric this Moscow-loving, khaki-wearing punk in boat shoes uses is very telling too. I mean, the United States is absolutely not at war with Russia. 2, we are not funding Russia's enemies. We are aiding and funding the United States' ally in a time of war. I want you to understand, when this monstrous piece of shit is talking about forced negotiations, he's 100% talking about defunding everything from Ukraine so this war is impossible to fight for them. And then on top of that, giving Russia all the land that they've seized illegally in this war. I mean, it's pretty plain to see that's what he wants. It's pretty plain to see that's what he's hoping for. The problem is you cannot force two sides to come together that have absolutely no intentions at this point on negotiations. And because it's Tucker Carlson we're talking about, and he's just a disgusting human being, he somehow manages to incorporate transphobia, vaccine conspiracies, all while begging the United States Congress, or at least the Republicans, to not go against Russia.
So, this is insane. They're insane. These are people who think men can become women, who believe that face masks save you from COVID. I mean, these are not rational people. Would they go to war with Russia? Of course they would. Again, they want to anyway. And I don't know why Republicans don't get this at all, but they don't seem to get it. And meanwhile, Republican leaders, and Mitch McConnell's senile too, so I don't even blame him, but all the stupid Republican senators and McCarthy in the House, I mean, it's pathetic. These people are all on board with the war against Russia. Why?
Well, let's see here. For a fucking start, it could be because they invaded a sovereign nation. Could be because they bomb men, women, and children indiscriminately in schools, warehouses, apartment buildings, shopping malls. Could be because they're stealing Ukrainian children and shipping them back to Russia. Could be because of Putin's obvious plans to take over Eastern Europe and put back together the Soviet Union. Or maybe just because this is an obvious fight between good and evil. A fight that you will absolutely not catch me on the wrong side of. When one side is bombing military installations to defend their homeland and the other is just bombing schools, I think it's an obvious fucking choice which side you should be on. This next clip is just not only wild, but it has to be one of the best cases of gaslighting I've ever seen. I mean, Tucker Carlson, after declaring his love and affiliation and backing for Russia on national television, after everything he said in all the interviews since then and everything you've just heard in this interview, he actually claims to be the only person in the United States that has no real feelings about Russia. All while in the same breath, he continues to try to convince Republicans that Russia is not worthy of being our global adversary and global enemy, and then continues to spout Russian propaganda talking points that somehow the United States is in free fall and that the dollar is in trouble.
The view of Russia is very, and I can say this as someone who was, against the Soviets when it mattered, when they existed. But I'm maybe the only person in the United States who doesn't really have very strong feelings about Russia. I'm not that interested in Russia. I don't see it as our enemy or ally. I just don't have strong emotions about Russia. Why
shouldn't I root for Russia? Which I am.
So I look at this and I see true hysteria. Like, they've convinced themselves that our global enemy is Russia. And I really think they mean that. And certainly the Republicans mean it. The Nikki Haley, Mike Pence, the low IQ wing of the Republican Party, which is most of the Republican Party. And someone needs to slap them awake. You're leading this country to its destruction. We've already lost control of the world. The American empire's in free fall right now. And we're going to lose the U.S. dollar. And when that happens, we're going to have real poverty here, like Great Depression level poverty. And it comes from this war. And I don't understand why no one else can see this.
The cowardly one-man propaganda machine and Russia's best spokesperson wasn't done there either. Here he is with more lies about the German economy and without any evidence whatsoever, claiming it was the Biden administration who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
The Biden administration blew up Nord Stream and, created the largest act of industrial sabotage in history, the largest man-made CO2 emission in history, an environmental crime. This is a huge deal. This happened. And every national security reporter just looked right into the camera and said, well, we think Russia did it. Well, they knew Russia didn't do it. That's a lie. And they knew it was a lie. The German economy was crushed when the Biden administration blew up Nord Stream. I know nobody cares, but if you think long term about this, they're really kicking the legs out from under this country in a way that is not possible to repair, at least in the short term.
Luckily, it was at this point that Tucker seemed to have exhausted all his Russian talking points he received from the Kremlin that day. Unfortunately, he went straight into conspiracy theories and claiming the CIA was involved in the murder of a United States president.
And it's true, I happen to know. And I could bore you for hours, again, since I spent my life there and know a lot of people who work there. But the bottom line is there's no oversight at all. They were able to participate in the murder of a U.S. president and then hide that fact for 60 years by keeping those documents classified, which they still are. It's unbelievable. And it's happening in front of all of us, and nobody seems to care. But, as the country declines and the democratic institutions weaken, and you wonder, how did this happen? Well, that's how it happened, right there.
Here's the deranged scumbag carrying water and running interference for a common criminal we know from his text messages he can't stand, lying through his teeth by saying that Donald Trump is only being prosecuted because he complained about the last election, and once again claiming that Donald Trump's life is under threat of assassination.
They protested him. They called him names. He won anyway. They impeached him twice on ridiculous pretenses. They fabricated a lot about what happened on January 6th in order to impeach him again. It didn't work. He came back. Then they indicted him. It didn't work. He became more popular. Then they indicted him 3 more times. And every single time his popularity rose. So if you begin with criticism, then you go to protest, then you go to impeachment, now you go to indictment, and none of them work, what's next? I mean, graph it out, man. We're speeding toward assassination, obviously. I mean, they're putting him on trial in March of next year in the J6 case, which basically consists of trying to send him to prison for the rest of his life for complaining about the last election. That's literally what it is.
And as usual with these people, the only way to end one of the most dangerous, bizarre, and ridiculous interviews that I've ever seen, which is pretty much every right-wing interview ever given nowadays, is by giving the most bizarre and dangerous and conspiracy-laden rant that I've ever heard Tucker Carlson go on.
You know, in 2008, it became really clear that Barack Obama had been having sex with men.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And smoking crack. And a guy came forward, Larry Sinclair, and said, I'll sign an affidavit. And he did. I'll take a lie detector. And he did. I smoked crack with Barack Obama and had sex with him. I smoked crack with Barack Obama and had sex with him. That was obviously true. Nobody reported it, not because they were squeamish about sex or drugs, but because the Obama campaign said anyone who reports on this gets no access to the Obama campaign.
And this guy is living in just absolute crazy town. How is this the guy that has so much sway and so much power over what so many people on the right think and believe? In this video alone, he's shown his support for a dictatorial regime that invaded a sovereign nation. He's shown his support for a common criminal and a fascist who tried to overthrow the United States election. He's shown absolutely no remorse for the men, women, and children suffering in Ukraine at the hands of Vladimir Putin right now. At some point, there's going to be absolutely no conclusion for me to come to other than this guy is just a paid Russian shill. I don't know if he has some sort of business connections over there. I don't know if he has some sort of assets over there. I don't know if he was promised something by somebody in high places over there, but there's absolutely no reason for this guy to be this traitorous and this treacherous against his own country. But this interview is the perfect example of why we need to continue to share these videos far and wide, and exactly why I'm so committed to stay right here at the MeidasTouch Network to combat the bullshit, to fight this rhetoric coming out from the other side, to make sure that you guys actually know the truth. So if you like the content, you like what all the great people here at MeidasTouch stand for, please hit the like button, please subscribe, please share. You can find MeidasTouch at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. You can also join my Patreon, patreon.com/BostonBrian. It really helps. It shows that you guys actually appreciate the hard work and dedication that we put into videos like this to bring you the truth, to fight this friggin' fascism, to make sure these people do not take control in this country. Until next time, I'm Boston Brian from the MeidasTouch Network. Keep kicking ass.
Hey Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.